if you are an investor that is actively marketing with text message marketing or text blasting, however you want to label it, or you're thinking about doing it and you want to know the right steps and the proper paths to take in order to do it correctly and efficiently, then today's episode is going to be a very good one for you. I have my good friend Michael Bartolomei from Launch Control, a texting platform for real estate investors, specifically for real estate investors. And we talk about a whole slew of things, but one of the things I want to make sure you know of is we do talk about launch control, but a lot of what we talk about here is specifically in the text space. So it's not just like how to use launch control and that sort of thing, which I think you guys should. I definitely will push you that way. But we talk about compliance. We talk about where the industry has gone with text blasting and text message marketing and that sort of thing, and really how to frame. And Michael even specifically mentions one time, the whole connotation of text blasting, it should be switched in a different manner to just text message marketing, because that's the proper way to do it, as opposed to the shotgun approach, which is one of the things we really talk about, just an ethics standpoint of marketing correctly to your leads. And also, of course, wanting to get them from a text message onto a phone call with you and your sales team, because that's a whole lot easier of a conversation to have. One really big epiphany for me throughout the episode, towards the end, we talk about how to integrate your text message marketing with your other marketing. So you could leverage it as a kind of go-between when you're sending out direct mail, you're running PPC or SEO, whatever it is that you're doing from another marketing source, and plugging that in with text message marketing. And Michael walks us through some very, very good steps on how to utilize text message marketing for nurturing, not just outbound marketing, which is what most people think it is, where you're just sending a text blast and then you're, getting in front of as many people as you possibly can that's on a specific list that you have from a data provider. What we talk about is nurturing, which I love, because being in the organic content space, that's a lot of what organic content marketing is. It's just lead nurturing. So we talk about how to utilize that and how that can take your existing text message marketing plan and strategy to a whole nother level, and you can utilize it to nurture your leads and eventually get deals from them. So I'm excited to have Michael on the show today. He does have a podcast called Deal Nation, hosted by him and Launch Control. And then also there is going to be some links down below for you to be able to check out to sign up with Launch Control, or talk to somebody on their staff that can help you with assessing your needs for your business and be able to plug you in with the right system for your specific marketing needs. So I'm really hoping that you guys are going to enjoy this episode. I think it's going to be a great one. I also was on Michael's podcast called Deal Nation, so make sure you go check that out. That'll once again be linked down in the description below. But you guys enjoy this episode. You're going to get a lot out of it. Make sure you take notes, and let's get going. Welcome back to the REI Marketing Weekly. It's your host, Josh Culler. And today I have a special guest on the show joining us from Launch Control. And it's not an actual location. It's just, that's the organization that he's a part of, is Michael Bartolomei. I am super excited to have you on the show because, well, number one, I was on your show. We recorded that last week, and I'm not sure if that's going to be going out anytime soon, but that was a really, really great show. We went about 45 minutes, 50 minutes, something like that, and talked about a lot of things in the, Michael actually interviewed me for his show, and we'll talk about the show a little bit later on in the podcast episode. And obviously everything we mentioned in the show today will be down in the show notes below. So make sure you go check it out. But we talked about a lot of things with content marketing, social media, stuff like that. But today, Michael primarily works within the text marketing space. Now, texting's been around for some time. I would say probably it's been a very widely used marketing tactic for 5-7 years, somewhere in that range, where a lot of people are utilizing it. And I think that some of the places I want to start, Michael, first of all, is I want to be able to debunk a myth that text message marketing is dying, because I think there's a lot of people that are listening right now, all real estate wholesalers, people that are generating leads, marketing, and that sort of thing. And maybe some of them have shut off texting because they believe that with all the compliance issues and stuff like that, stuff has come up. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to market to the wrong person and that sort of thing. So why don't we start there? That's a banger question, because I know that's going to be something that you probably have had to address quite a bit over the years. So where is that standing right now, and how are you guys handling it in order to be able to still be able to market and utilize text blasting for marketing purposes?
Well, it's funny that you say over the years, because I started with Launch Control right after its inception. So like 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
And the first investors that I talked to, as I was just really trying to learn the investment side of the business, I came from a very strong sales and marketing background, but not a heavy real estate investment background. So I had to get to know the clients. And they all told me, well, this isn't going to last. Texting's dead, right? It was always this, the sky is falling. That was
Even back in 2018?
it was 2018, right? And it was, and the same narrative has persisted. And I'll give you an exact example of why that's persisted. So we're recording this on the 28th. And so January 27th, there was a big, hubbub in the industry about one-to-one consent, right? And so in real estate investment, often people will see anything that's even remotely regulatory, whether it's from the federal side, which is TCPA, or even if it's just the carriers and the carriers initiating or optimizing their B2B best practices, which have no legal connection whatsoever. It's just B2B best practices. Everybody lumps that all together and goes, well, text is dying. All right. So, and I was listening to some compliance experts, right? These are legal professionals that focus on compliance. And the reason I bring up the one-to-one consent rule is because it got killed in court yesterday, right? It was supposed to go live on the 27th, got killed in court. It's been delayed for at least a year, probably forever, right? But what that one-to-one consent rule was focused on was auto dialers and AI tools. So it was basically saying that you can't set an AI generated voicemail and ship it out via an auto dialer, right? Which launch control isn't. An auto dialer, everybody knows it's just running through thousands of numbers with no human interaction, right? And it also had a stipulation that was a little bit focused on lead sellers, right? So if somebody opts in from something on paid advertising and you're selling those leads to 5 or 6 different people, somebody's looking for, community information, and then they suddenly get calls from every plumber, roofer, contractor, etc. in the area, trying to crack down on that. Had nothing to do with real estate investment, had nothing to do with the use case in which we text under, but people heard change and went end. Yeah. And that has always happened, right? So from 2018 until now, the same, you can call it an exception, you can call it a byline in the laws, but if you are not selling a product or service, right, you're not a company that is going to, in the end, cost that person money, you can reach out on a one-to-one basis and it does not fall into the terms of solicitation. And so text engagement is always fit within that window, right? And that goes all the way up, like those legal professionals that I referred to. I loved this part that they brought up. They're like, look, recipients don't know anything about these rules. And honestly, neither do the lawyers a lot of times. So he's like, we'll get suits where somebody wanted to file a suit based on the do not call list or something. And then they're like, it doesn't apply. And when we push back and we show very clearly that it doesn't apply, these things often go away. But you have to push back. When you react in fear or concern and you just settle, then you're going to settle. But if it ever gets to that point, they were saying that oftentimes you push back, you get positive results out of it because people don't, even on the legal side, don't necessarily understand the intricacies of it. And not to ramble too much here, the last thing I'll say about this is that keep in mind that not just launch control, but text providers in throughout real estate investment and other industries, because this applies to other industries, the likelihood of it ever getting to that question, whatever being a legal issue, is extremely, extremely low. People are sending millions of messages a year, or tens of thousands of messages a year. Platforms are sending millions of messages a year. Everything would have gotten shut down in 2018 if the sky was truly falling. It's not.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, there's there's kind of a line when, even though now that, and thank you for explaining that, and I think that kind of debunks the is texting dead, or should we not ever use texting again, and that sort of thing. Because another couple of things that were under the scope were ringless voicemails and cold calling, right? It's normally been those three things that people are always like concerned with over the years, but still you'll have people say that cold calling is the way to go. I don't really hear many people talking about ringless voicemail, but I do know a good amount of people are still doing texting. And I think it's very important to know these type of standards and the things that, obviously the platform that you use, which is where we'll talk about launch control a little bit later on. But the platform that you use will and should be aware of these type of things to protect you and make sure that you are marketing to these people correctly and not crossing that line of solicitation. Now, let's go to what that next step would be, where now we're starting to get into marketing tactics. From a standpoint of from maybe the data that you guys have looked at, some of the analytics or what's worked for people that use launch control, generally speaking, what's a good kind of like entry point to, obviously to me specifically, when I get a text message, and I'm very leery about this stuff because I'm just on guard. I'm a marketer. I know what I'm being marketed to. When I get a text message that is clearly solicitation, obviously it goes straight to the report junk and then it gets blocked, right? What is the way to be able to enter somebody's text message inbox and not have them block you, and you actually start beginning a conversation with them and then be able to build a relationship and convert that lead? That might be a mouthful, but do your best.
No. I understand. There's one of the coaches that we worked with has a line that I really like, which is, say you're a local investor without saying you're a local investor. And people tend to fall into these kind of tropes of, you own 57 Green Street, right? Question mark, because they're looking for some kind of quick confirmation or confirmation of ownership.
Yes or no. Yeah.
Yeah. And I get that. Looking for quick confirmation is good, right? Because with a text message, you want immediate response. It's not an email. You're not stating your full case. You're not selling yourself over a text message. You're just looking for an engagement structure to start, right? It needs to go from being a one-way conversation to a two-way conversation. And you want that to happen as quickly as possible. But if you're able to show, and remember that you're talking to an individual, right? So if you're saying that I'm making these messages up off the top of my head, I'm not pulling solid examples, right? But if you go in and you say, I buy houses for cash in the area, I could buy yours, let's talk about a number, right? Well, now it's going to sound immediately to that person like a business process that's based on volume, right?
Yeah.
And they feel like a number in that volume process. It's going to be a good chance that you're going to get a quick report, unless they're in like the most intense part of the distress factors, right? If they've got the bank demotivated, yeah. Unless you catch them at highly motivated,
What's the chances of that are slim to none,
are minuscule, right?
Yeah.
You want to be able to spread out your circle so that you're getting people that are even in like the early consideration stage to think about working with you. And so if you change that message to, I buy a bunch of houses for cash, I could buy yours, what are you looking for? And you change it to something like, I've been looking for a property, within like, or a house within like 20, 25 minutes of the airport, not finding anything on MLS, wondering if if anything's available in the area or going to be available in the area soon, right? And you're not even asking about their property. You're asking about just the neighborhood that you're interested in or the area that you're interested in. So you're saying I'm looking to invest locally without saying I'm a local investor. I pay cash for houses. That kind of intro can be more personalized. By more personalized, could get a response. Right? Now, the important thing to remember, and this is where everybody goes, well, what do I say next? What do I do next? I mean, look at your own text messages. Right? Like you respond in short clipped sentences, you keep it to the point, you do it in conversations that progress quickly. And if you're a real estate investment investor, you're looking for the earliest, especially in homes, the earliest exit point to go to a discovery call. I think what we really want, our metric of success in launch control is not messages sent, it's not deliverability rate, and it's not even response rate. It's how many discovery calls did your efforts deliver for your business? Because once you hit discovery call, like let's just use 50 as a simple number, right? If you get to 50 discovery calls for your business, you can have, with just a little bit of history, an exact ROI number from that, because that's not about text. It's a sales conversion function. And if you know how well, like, you get your acquisitions person, or you get yourself as a solo entrepreneur onto a discovery call, you're not going to close 100%. You're very unlikely to close 50%. But the difference between like 10% or 5% and 15% is wild at the end of the year in terms of the money you're bringing in. All right. So we're looking at how many out of a list of names, which are not leads, they are just names. How many people raised their hand and said, okay, I'm willing to have a conversation? How many of those were you able to pivot to a discovery call? At which point our job is done, to be quite honest. If they've gotten to discovery call, it's now your job as a real estate investor and a whole different set of metrics in order to close that out and realize the end ROI that came from what started with the text.
Yeah, for sure. That's extremely insightful. And I agree. Like, once that's where kind of like the bridge from marketing to sales kind of intersects. It's now in the sales pipeline, and that's where now we go into that type of conversation, right?
And something that I will mention in terms of, I mentioned deliverability and response rates, right? Not everybody, but often people are looking for that magic message, right? Like, what's the magic message that's gonna get everybody into my inbox? There is no magic message. If your messaging sucks, you might get like a 12 to 14% response rate, right? And some of those, and a higher proportion of those responses are going to be negative, right? Are just going to be like an angry retort instead of interest. If you have really good messaging, really unique messaging, you might get, 17% on the initial outreach, and then you have 2 more at bats to get them to respond in the next 30 and 60 days. You might get a little over 20 as your aggregate total, right? So for every 1,000 names you're putting in, yes, over the course of the year, that 1, 2, 3% makes a difference. But what really makes you the money is however many names end up in your inbox, being able to pivot those to real conversations. That's the magic, is when it hits the inbox, you having the response structure and the systems in place with your team to get to discovery call as soon as possible. You do that, that's where you realize all of your money. It's rarely about send more messages. It's usually about maximize the messages that you send.
Interrupting this podcast episode to tell you guys that this podcast is managed and produced by Color Media Productions. Yes, shameless plug, that's my company. However, we do this for a lot of other people as well. Most people that we work with are in the real estate investing space. So if you're listening to this podcast specifically, you probably are a real estate investor, given it's called the ROI Marketing Weekly. If you're somebody that either wants to start a podcast or you have one going and it's becoming a little bit of a hassle, you're looking to transition to somebody that works a little bit better with a fluid motion in terms of you get the recordings done and then they do everything else. Well, that's what we do. We do fully managed podcasts from start to finish, video, audio, show noting, the graphics, publishing, everything that goes into it. It's a full service business that we run here in a service for you as a real estate investor if you are running a podcast. Additionally, we also do social media and YouTube management as well. So all of that being on the organic side, if you are interested in learning more about working with us and just recording content with guidance and strategy set by myself personally, and then not doing anything else after that, where we're taking care of everything from start to finish, then make sure you go check us out at colormedia.com, CULLER media.com. Hit us up there and we can learn more about working together, hop on a phone call and see what we could do for you. Now back to the episode.
That's good truth. That was actually going to be the next thing I was going to ask about, is you've mentioned this pivot a couple times. What is the best process? And this might be different for every business, and it might look different for, different types of investors, and maybe even the different type of motivations, like if they're going through probate or if it's a tired landlord, whatever it is. What's generally a good process and method to pivot off the text message to a phone call to now it's that discovery call is what you're calling it? What's the best way to kind of process that out and not hurry the conversation, but also try to get them internally, we're trying to get them off the texting into the phone call, right? So what's the best process to make that happen?
Well, let's reverse engineer it all the way. right? Because ultimately it comes down to what data you're putting into the system. Launch control is a piece of software. It enables you to take 1,000 names, deliver it to 1,000 individuals, each one getting a unique message, and then getting responses coming back in. The idea is to be able to take what would take you 8 hours, 10 hours to do from your phone and shrink it down to half an hour of work, right? Like we're just grouping those individual ISO 101 calls into a dashboard for you to be able to communicate. But if you're going to do that one-on-one, right? Let's say you're going to do one at a time. You're not just going to send out a message. You're going to look at who you're sending that message to. You're going to know who the recipient is, and you're going to have a talk track in mind, right? Because if they do respond, you want to be ready to go, right? So you want to have a recipient specific talk track in mind. So before you get to that pivot point, if you segment your data in the right way and then use features within the launch control system, like a simple one, we have a custom tagging feature. So if it was, and you brought up probate. So if you've got a list that's segmented down to, it's a probate list, the county that it's in, and you've got a tag that says, like secondary owner, right? So from an initial conversation or initial text response, somebody says, well, I need to talk to my sister. She's also involved. Secondary owner, right? Now you can filter any of those probate leads that have given you that little extra bit of information, or even if you got that information from your data provider, that you can apply that tag. So going into that call, when you pivot to discovery, you've got a 2-owner situation that you need to navigate. And there's a certain talk track you want to go down for that, right? So if you do that and you go into your day and you filter by these types of leads and these types of talk tracks, then that each one of those, it's going to be slightly case dependent, right? Some of them you're going to want to just call straight away. Some of them you may want to ask a qualifying question or two, but you're going to have them subgrouped into buckets, basically, and you know how to work that bucket. And if you do that, you're not constantly in the dashboard going, wait, who was this? Where was this property? You're not in a flustered mode with each one of the leads that you're working. And instead you're hyper focused on single solutions. Makes it easier for you. It makes it a much more natural conversation. And then that pivot point becomes simple, right? Like you're in some ways going off of whatever nuanced approach you take for your business.
Yeah. So I think, okay, so I'm trying to decompress all that because that's a lot of really good information. And I think that obviously you started with the data and how important that is. Does Launch Control provide data? Do you guys get it from somewhere else? What does that process look like for the data? Because, like you said, that's where the gold is. It's not necessarily the platform that's being used. It's the data that you're acquiring. So speak on how important that is too.
So data is the sole responsibility of the subscriber. Launch Control does not provide data in the terms and conditions, the whole thing, right? We are software. The software is meant to take the names that you have, deliver those messages, and then allow you to progress those leads as needed. That said, within our network, we've got some great data providers that we are partnered with in terms of education, right? So what we'll often do with data providers is if somebody comes to our customer success team and says, hey, the data I've got isn't working, we'll say, okay, we've got someone that I think fits what you guys do with your business. Why don't you have, a quick 20-minute consultation with them? And if they're a good solution, great, but we'll give them that lead to get that 20-minute consultation. Now, what we can do, we cannot provide data, but what we can and we will do is if that data provider that you're working with, and I'm not talking about the low-level data providers, I won't mention names, where you're just going in and ripping lists off, but you're actually working with somebody on a bit of a data strategy and a filtering strategy within their systems, we'll make that shared knowledge. If they're one of our partners, we can work with them. They'll tell us what the strategy was that they're working with you on. And then we have the ability through either our CS team to help you implement that strategy, and then potentially ship some big picture analytics back to them so that they can even improve their data further. Or we will run text for you through our done for you service, which is called Launch Leads. So in that case, again, you would procure the data, you or our data partners would let us know what the strategy is, and then we'll execute that strategy and send out the messages. So they're very parallel, separate tracks, but tracks that, you can kind of shout across and talk to each other from.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you explaining that. And again, like with data being on the mind and what we're talking about, I felt like that was very important to, have a discussion on where we can actually get the data from. So kind of pivoting a little bit as we, have about 5-10 minutes left over here. I think one of the conversations I want to have is kind of what you're seeing evolve in texting right now. Is there any kind of evolution, starting off in 2018 as a partner in launch control and seeing where it's gone, besides compliance, which we already talked about, but just from a standpoint of the execution of running text campaigns, the volume, the type of messages you're sending, how fast you're getting people to a phone call. What are some evolutions that people really need to know about, especially if they've done texting for quite some time and they need to step up their game, or they're new into the space of text marketing? What are some things that need to be brought up that has kind of changed and evolved over the last couple of years?
Well, let me ask you a marketing question first, and then I'll answer that. So when you get any kind of regulatory changes that affect marketing, and it doesn't have to be just text, it can be email regulation, paid search regulation. Why do these regulations happen? Like, where does it come from? What's the starting point?
Well, normally it's to protect the person getting marketed to.
Exactly.
The user.
And it's not out of nowhere. It's because somebody got pissed.
And then another person complained, and then another, and another, to the point that they were like, all right, we'll do something about it.
Right. So it is a counter against abusive marketing or abusive sales practices that leads to this. Always. And so it's the few bad actors shut it down for everyone. And in texting, there are people that, to this day, and it's not my favorite, you can listen to any podcast I've ever been on where I talk about how much I hate the term text lasting, right? And there are a lot of REI teams out there that will buy as much data as they can, and they will just rip through it. And if anybody responds, they'll call them 12 times in 3.5 days. And it's either, say uncle or sell, right? And that say uncle or sell mentality is the driving force behind these regulatory changes across all forms of marketing, right? So in order for this to continue for everyone, and this is texting and beyond, that predatory style of marketing, that very, very heavy shotgun approach to marketing, needs to grow the explicative up, right? There needs to be a maturing process to how marketing is handled. A greater reliance on organic search, a greater reliance on social media to capture inbound leads where people are actually opting in, a system where there is outbound, because with real estate investment and many other businesses, without the existence of outbound, those businesses cannot scale. That's just the simple truth. Like, there's just not going to be enough lead generation without an outbound component. But having a structure in that outbound component that takes into consideration the recipient of that message and gives them an exit door in a manner that allows them to feel like, you know what, this was okay, right? Or if they want to continue and choose that adventure, that they have an easy path to continue. It's not say uncle or sell, but rather like, you have opportunity. Here's the path to find out about that opportunity. Here's how we can help. Setting up more mature, respectful marketing systems and balanced marketing systems isn't just where I see the industry going. It's where the industry has to go.
Yeah.
Because at some point that, like, right now it's the texting is dead thing is the boy who cried wolf. It's bullshit. Excuse my language. But at some point it's not going to be, right? Like if it continues down for 5 years from now, 6 years from now, if that excess kind of predatory behavior continues, it could potentially get regulated into non-existence. I don't want that to happen. Nobody wants that to happen. So more mature, respectful marketing is the way forward.
I 100% agree with everything that Michael said there. And me not being in the specific industry of texting and on some of the organic side of content, this is a line where on the organic side, we really don't get to see this much because the algorithms really feed it to the user, however and the user's on the platform anyway. But when you're encroaching on somebody's personal cell phone and texting them that way, the exact way that you're talking about, the predatory marketing methods, that definitely is it's going to get shut down. It's going to be talked about. It's going to be approached as a scam. So I 100% agree with that. And I think, so one of the things that you kind of went into that I want to wrap up here with, that actually we had a brief discussion before we started recording. Depending on the way that you have text message marketing wrapped into the rest of your marketing and brand, I mean, that kind of behavior can definitely eliminate any authority, credibility, any of the brand that you have in your marketplace. But on the flip side, if you do it right, it could definitely be a really big uplift system for you as well. One of the things that you potentially talking about here was how to integrate text message marketing with your other types of marketing. So we didn't really go deep into it, so I don't really know what to ask beyond that, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, thinking just beyond launch control and just thinking of text as an engagement tool, super powerful across every stage of your business, right? Just using REI as an example. You can use it to create lead generation. You can use it for the transaction coordination process and quickly getting through like paperwork and agreement without having to have endless phone calls. You can use it to connect with realtors, which can create an additional income stream for you. You can use it to connect with buyers, which will create an easy income stream and potentially a bidding situation. So if you think of all of the ways in which text can be useful for your business, launch control can be used in all of those instances, or you can have ways in which if you have a more advanced system where you're using some of the texting capabilities through your CRM for some of it and launch for others. So I'll give you an example. There's been a big push in the last couple of years for PPC. All right. And for every 100, like any real estate leads that come in, you're not going to close 100 of 100. In fact, for every 100 PPC leads that come in, 2.5 deals, something like that, right? Which means that you have 97.5 people that raise their hand and say, yeah, I'm interested in selling my house. What do you got? Right. So that they're just not ready. So now that is a nurture situation. So if you export those 97 names on a repetitive basis and you put them back into launch control and you let them nurture through launch control, you're getting a much, much, much higher ROI on ad spend that you've already had for PPC. You're just optimizing that channel by using a handful of messages in another channel you already have. And the combination between them, if let's say that out of every quarter, you get 2 extra deals by just adding that additional nurture layer to what you're doing with launch control. So you're getting 8 extra deals over the course of the year, right? And let's say a $20,000 to $25,000 per deal average. Right? That's an extra $50,000 every quarter for your business, $200,000 a year for your business, and it took nothing. You could have a VA set up the right drip campaign for those people and have it all on autopilot. And as long as that system's in place, you could be potentially sleeping on an extra 200 plus grand a year just by not integrating your marketing. Same could be said for direct mail. Same could be said for a lot of data capture that you're doing, even through social, of just setting up. But imagine if everybody that you have coming in through social, if you give them the option to opt in to a text thread, and then you put them onto a drip automation through launch control, where you're able to send recipient specific information, right? They don't have to catch your message on Instagram or whatever. It doesn't have to be a message that is tailored for everybody because you don't know who's going to see it. You can take subgroups in those threads within launch control and send them very recipient specific follow-up messages, right? And so if you're a real estate company and you know that you want to nurture people that have come in through social or whatever, and you want to send them testimonials from clients that you've worked with. You want to send them success stories within their area of people that you've helped out. You want, you can put together that value-based messaging. And now you're taking, what was names that were just followers on Instagram, and you're turning that into hard data. And that hard data can be actualized through text. So it's just getting creative with the systems that you have and utilizing that real-time value of text to really push additional engagement.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And even me, like, I'll admit, as you're explaining this, I'm like, man, this all makes sense. It's all put together. Because I think initially whenever you hear the word, text blasting or text message marketing or any of that kind of, phrasing of text marketing and how to utilize texting, people automatically think it's just all outbound stuff. And that's initially what I think about but now you're talking about using it as a nurture tool, which is obviously fantastic because most people want to communicate through text as it is, and being able to utilize it. It's just a matter of utilizing it more intentionally as opposed to, like you said earlier, the shotgun approach of the outbound marketing. That's a fantastic way to use it. And,
obviously to that, it's kind of important to think about too, is as you grow, like let's say that you're a big real estate company and you're working with Stephanie Betters and you're over at Left Main and you've got this whole Salesforce foundation to your system, right? You don't want 2 years worth of leads in your system that didn't actually pan out, right? Yeah. Because it starts to, from a lens of your business, you start to see it as like, well, we didn't close that or that or that. And you don't keep that narrow window of like what's actionable right now, right? So when you're able to keep that clean, clear focus in your CRM, it gives your whole team a sense of better accomplishment because all of that is relevant to the moment. And then anything that needs to be nurtured, you export it to launch, it's working in the background. And so when they re-engage and they get re-pushed to the CRM, well, now it's in the moment grouping again, right? So it's relevant to what your team should be focused on instead of one of these days we got to get to the yesterday bucket. Nobody ever gets to the yesterday bucket, right? So export the yesterday bucket and let us make it relevant again through launch.
Interesting. I love that tactic. I think that's something that we definitely need a table for another conversation because most of what we talked about is outbound text marketing, text message marketing, which is what typically most people kind of label it as. But utilizing it as a nurture tool and nurturing sequence is that's next. That's where you take text message marketing and is here, and then you can take it to the very next level, which I'm sure a lot of people are not doing. So. Anyway, Michael, man, this has been absolutely fantastic. You've answered every single one of my questions very thoroughly. I'm sure that people are going to have more questions to ask and want to even check out Launch Control. So as we wrap up here, I want to give you the opportunity. I know we have the podcast that I'm going to be featured on, and then that you host, and then called Deal Nation, and then if there's any way to be able to connect with Launch Control, get a demo going, figure out how they can utilize the platform, that sort of thing. So talk about some ways to connect and how to make that happen.
Yeah, so we'll put a couple of links in the show notes here. The website is just launchcontrol.us, and we'll put that down below. Everybody can go get a little bit more information about the company and schedule a time with our team. I'll also give you just a direct link to connect with our team. So there's basically 2, potentially 3 conversations you're going to want to have. Book a time with the sales team. Think of them as just kind of assessing what you need for your business. And then if you become a subscriber, really work with our customer success team. They're phenomenal. They'll work on all of our kind of out of the box strategies. And then if you really want to take a deep dive on strategy, they can call me in and I'll work with you on your individual strategy and some of this stuff that we just talked about of like nurturing and retargeting. Then I can come in and give you a high level consult, but we'll do it in that progression. And it's the best way to work with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Briefly explain the podcast as well.
Oh yeah. So for everybody, we've got actually 2 resources that are good. If you're wherever you're listening to this, look for on Deal Nation. It's the name of our podcast. Josh was a very recent guest of ours. It's a mix of just big names, successful people in the REI space, and also just subscribers from Launch Control, so we can get kind of stories throughout the cycle of real estate investment. And then we have a free for everyone Facebook group. So if you just look for Investors Hub REI on Facebook and connect with us there, you do not need to be a subscriber. That's just a way to connect with the community, network with us, and then when you're ready to join.
Absolutely. Man, I appreciate all of that. Everything that Michael mentioned will be down in the show notes below, so make sure you do go check all of that out. Make sure to check out the podcast so you can see yours truly on there. Michael, it's been absolutely fantastic. Great 35-ish minutes with you. I appreciate your time. Thanks for investing some value into us, and I look forward to having you back again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Guys, that is going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining in and listening today. If you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the show. Share this with a friend, somebody that you think that would benefit from this. And once again, everything that we did talk about will be down in the show notes below. So make sure you go check out all those links and connect with Michael, Launch Control, listen to the podcast and all that good stuff. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you have checked out my YouTube channel, Josh Culler. I'm putting out a lot of good content, teaching people how to create content, and all these episodes for the REI Marketing Weekly are going there as well in the video format, of course. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. See you later.